We laughed, we danced, we wore glitter and polyester like armor. Yet somehow, the strangest joys of the 1970s quietly vanished while we weren't looking. What weird little wonders did we lose? And why does remembering them feel like coming home to a life we forgot we loved? Avocado Green and Harvest Gold appliances. They were not just colors, they were a mood, a way of life, a national obsession. If your family had a refrigerator, oven, or even a stand mixer in the 1970s, chances are it was proudly painted in avocado green or harvest gold. These colors seeped into American homes like smoke through an open window. They were earthy, comforting, and oddly futuristic, like they belonged in your grandmother's farmhouse and on a spaceship at the same time. If you grew up opening a Harvest Gold refrigerator to grab a can of orange soda, you remember how right it felt, even if it clashed with everything else in the room. That avocado green stove wasn't just where your parents cooked dinner, it's where you waited to hear the pop of the popcorn. That color wasn't a design choice, it was the background of your life. What makes it funny now is how seriously everyone took it, how confidently we wrapped our whole kitchens in two shades that looked like mustard and guacamole got in a fight. Clogs, they clacked, they thudded. They echoed across school hallways and suburban sidewalks like someone dropped a toolbox full of maracas. Clogs were not just shoes, they were the sound of the 1970s growing louder with every step. Imported in spirit from the Netherlands, but reimagined in American malls, these wooden-soled shoes made fashion louder, literally. Kids wore them, parents wore them, teachers wore them, and then regretted it halfway through the school day. There was no sneaking around in clogs. They announced you like a drum line at a parade. They were sturdy, comfortable if you got used to them, and they felt weirdly rebellious. Maybe they were impractical, maybe they didn't match anything you owned, but they looked good with bell-bottoms. The funny part is how seriously we took them, like wearing a chunk of painted wood strapped to your foot was the height of elegance. TV dinners. TV dinners were more than food. They were a revolution in a foil tray. You'd pull one from the freezer, peel back the corner, and 25 minutes later, you had dinner, kind of. The mashed potatoes were crusty on one side and icy on the other. The gravy had merged with the corn, and that chocolate brownie in the corner was a molten rock capable of scorching the roof of your mouth until Tuesday. But none of that mattered, because you got to eat on a metal tray in the living room while watching All in the Family. TV dinners gave families a strange kind of freedom, the freedom to be alone, together. The funny part is how futuristic they felt, even though they were never that good. We laugh now, but we kept buying them because they gave us time. And back then, that was worth more than taste. Beaded door curtains. Walk through one, and you were instantly transported into another room, another vibe, another world. Beaded door curtains were not just home decor, they were portals. One second you were in the hallway, the next you were in your older sister's bedroom, where incense was burning and David Bowie was staring from the wall like a glittery prophet. The soft clatter of beads colliding became a soundtrack all its own. And you could never sneak through them, no matter how hard you tried. They were the tattletales of the 1970s. Whether they were made of bamboo, plastic, or little wooden cylinders, beaded curtains promised something magical, something adult, something groovy. The funny thing is, how useless they were at actually dividing rooms or providing privacy. But who cared? In a time when your bedroom was your castle, beaded curtains were your drawbridge. Latch hook rugs. It started with a blank mesh canvas, a plastic hook, and a tangle of brightly colored yarn that somehow always ended up in knots. To a kid, or even a bored adult in the 1970s, latch hook rugs were more than just crafts. They were a challenge, a hobby, a rainy day savior. Maybe it was a rainbow, a unicorn, or a cartoon tiger. Either way, the finished product hung on your wall with pride. You made it. You hooked every tuft. You stabbed that canvas like a warrior with a mission. There was something almost meditative about it, something calming in the repetition, pulling strand after strand through the mesh while the Brady Bunch played in the background. Looking back, it's funny how latch hook rugs turned an entire generation into tiny weavers with zero idea what they were doing. Roller disco. Roller disco was not just a hobby, it was a way of becoming someone else for a night. You laced up your skates like you were putting on a costume, stepped into that pulsating rink, and suddenly you were untouchable. The The music was always booming. Donna Summer, Chic, the Bee Gees, and the disco ball spun like a lighthouse, a guidepost, a disco deity above your head. The outfits were louder than the music. Metallic pants, crop tops, rainbow suspenders. You didn't have to be good, you just had to be in. And when the whole rink skated to the beat, it felt like the world was healing itself, one backward crossover at a time. The funny part is, most of us fell more than we skated, but no one cared. You'd laugh, crawl back up, and keep going because the floor was freedom. Rabbit ear antennas. Television in the 1970s wasn't just something you watched, it was something you adjusted, wrestled, and pleaded with. Every household had rabbit ears, those spindly metal antennas perched like insect limbs on top of the TV. If the picture went fuzzy, you didn't call for help, you got up. You grabbed the antennas like you were performing some ancient ritual. You waved them in the air, you wrapped them in foil, or jammed a wire hanger in there just to get the evening news. And when the signal came in, crystal clear, everyone in the room would freeze. Don't breathe. Don't move. Just let it play. It was a shared experience, with one person crouched behind the set while another yelled, "It's better! No, wait, go back!" The funny part is, it worked just enough to keep us trying. This wasn't passive viewing, it was active survival, and you felt like you earned that episode. Beanbag chairs. Beanbag chairs were anti-furniture. They didn't care about structure, design, or lumbar support. They just wanted you to plop down, sink in, and forget your bones existed. They came in colors that didn't match anything: burnt orange, pea green, electric blue, and textures that felt like cheap dreams, usually vinyl, sometimes velvet, always squeaky. You didn't sit on a beanbag, you disappeared into it. For kids, they were a throne. For teens, a nest. For adults, a regrettable purchase they kept anyway. They were rebellion in blob form. The funny part? They were impossible to get out of gracefully. You didn't stand, you rolled, you crawled, you clawed at the air like you were escaping quicksand. Pet rocks. Pet rocks were the most absurd, brilliant, and completely sincere product of the 1970s. Imagine walking into a store and buying a rock. Not a toy that looked like a rock, an actual rock. And your new pet came in a box with straw bedding and a care manual. In a world spiraling through inflation, war, and cultural tension, Americans collectively decided to laugh by adopting a rock. The genius was not the object, but the moment. For a few dollars, you bought not just the item, but the idea that maybe life didn't need to be so serious. Why did something so silly feel like the most comforting purchase of the decade? That's a question only the 70s can answer. Clackers. Clackers were dangerous, but that just made them better. Two acrylic spheres tethered by string, daring you to swing them so perfectly they'd smack together in a perfect rhythm. When you got it right, magic. When you didn't, bruises. Every playground in the 1970s echoed with the unmistakable clack, clack, clack of kids testing their reflexes and pushing their luck. There were no rules, no instructions, just noise and adrenaline. They were banned in some schools and feared by parents, but that only added to their mystique. You weren't just playing, you were proving something. You had skills, or at least you were brave enough to try. The funny part is, we kept buying them, breaking them, and begging for more. Clackers weren't safe, but they were unforgettable. From avocado green kitchens to the clatter of clogs in the hallway, these weren't just things. They were the wonderfully weird, surprisingly profound, and hilariously funny background of our lives. They were the moments we shared, the fads we followed, and the memories that make us smile today. What funny thing from the 70s do you remember most? If this video took you back, hit like it, drop your favorite memory in the comments, and subscribe before the ice cream truck disappears down the block. Thanks for watching.